is Charisse Green, and I am one of your City Walk Now hosts tonight, and I want to be the first person to welcome you here online with our service. We're going to get started in just a few minutes with our service, but before we do, I wanted to highlight a few features that are available with you as you engage in our service online. The very first thing is that we love online service because you get to talk throughout the entire service over in the chat box. So go ahead and try it out. Let us know where you're watching from. Another feature that it's available to you is if you click the request prayer button, we'll actually have one of our hosts connect with you privately and be able to pray over whatever prayer requests you might have. Another thing, if you want to connect even deeper with our church, we really recommend that you go to your app store and download the City Walk app. You'll find sermon notes, you'll find all of the things that you need to stay up to date with our gathering. Finally, we would love for you to be able to connect with us. If you are a first-time guest or you've been here for a few weeks, go ahead and press that connect button and fill out a little bit of information. We would love to get to know you a little bit better. We're gonna get started in just a couple minutes, like I said, but go ahead, don't be afraid to chat in that area, click all the buttons and explore, get comfortable, and we're gonna begin our service in just about 2 minutes.
Well, good morning. Welcome to City Walk. Stand and sing with us. The darkness run and hide. You bring the broken back to life. Only you can, only you can. You set me free from every chain. You fill my heart with songs of praise. Only you can, only you can. Jesus, you're the only reason that I'm even breathing. I am wide awake. Sing with us, my heart beats only for your glory. My hands reach up for you to hold me. My soul sings, Father, you are holy. My feet dance to rhythm. Every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name. Oh, 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 oh. You let the glory of your throne to bring this runaway back home. Only you can, only you can. You give me love, you give me life, you keep me dancing through the night. Only you can, only you can. My heart beats only for your glory. My hands reach up for you to hold me. My song sings, Father, you are holy. My feet dance afraid to clap. Come on. Jesus, you're the only reason that I'm even breathing. I am wide awake. Let's go. You move me, your freedom is consuming. I feel you rushing through me. I'll never be the same. My heart beats only for your glory. My hands reach up for you to hold me. My song sings, Father, you are holy. My feet dance to rhythm, to rhythm. Every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name. Oh, every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name. Oh, every beat is calling, every beat is calling out your name.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight on City Walk Now. My name is Asher Del Bono, and I'm going to be your host tonight. Now, myself and a few others, we are just hanging down in the chat box, and we would love to just chat with you and connect a little bit more. So feel free, don't be scared. Hop into that chat box. Let us know how your day is going, your week. We would love to talk and connect. Now, if this is your first time joining us, first of all, welcome. I'm so excited that you're joining us tonight. And we'd love to connect with you a little bit more outside that chat box as well. So all you need to do is just click on the connect button right next to me, fill out some basic information, and one of us will be in contact with you shortly afterwards. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get on back into worship, and I'll see you guys at the end of the service.
First John 4:18 says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. Another verse in Romans 8 says, for I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. A cool reminder for us that perfect love drives out fear. If we know and understand the character of God, and maybe you're here for the first time, maybe this is your first church experience, we want to introduce you to God here. But if you're a longtime follower of Jesus, or maybe you've just been introduced to Jesus and you've trusted him recently, perfect love drives out fear. Knowing God's character and who he is that perfect love. Drives out the fear that the world puts on us, the fear that we put on ourselves, the fear that other people put on us can be driven out by knowing that God cares for us, knowing we have an eternity in him, a hope for the future. His promises are true. So let's sing this together. When the weight of life begins to fall, on the name of Jesus I will call. For I know my God is in control, for his purpose is unshakable. Come on. Doesn't matter what I feel, doesn't matter what I see, my hope will always be your promises to me. I'm casting out all fear, for your love has set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. As I walk into the days to come, I will not forget what you've done. For you have supplied my every need. Oh, for your presence is enough for me. Yeah. Doesn't matter what I feel, doesn't matter what I see, my hope will always be your promises to me. Now I'm casting out all fear, for your love has set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. Oh. You will always be more than enough for me. You will always be more than enough for me. Nothing's gonna stop the plans you've made. Nothing's gonna take your love away. You will always be more than enough for me. Oh. You will always be more than enough for me. Lift your voice. You will always be more than enough for me. He's enough. Nothing's gonna stop the plans you made. Nothing's gonna take your love away. You will always be more than enough for me. Oh. Doesn't matter what I feel, doesn't matter what I see, my hope will always be your promises to me. Now I'm casting out all fear, for your love has set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. Doesn't matter what I feel, doesn't matter what I see, my hope will always be your promises to me. Now I'm casting out all fear, for your love has set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. Yeah, your promises to me.
rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the Church of Christ was born, and the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of all shall not kneel, shall not fade. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Ever to the King of Kings.
Jesus, we praise you for what you did. Lord, we love to sing your story, to think about what you've done through time. And here we are so many years later as the church, and we're still praising you, and you're still walking with us. Thank you so much, Lord, for who you are. I pray that you would just give us ears to hear what you have for us this morning, that you would give us hearts to understand. Lord, I thank you. You deserve our praise and our worship. Thank you for being with us here this morning. In Jesus' name, amen.
How's everybody doing this morning? If you're watching online, you're watching tonight. Hope you're doing well too. Before we dive into what we're going to be talking about today, in just about 21 days, and it's hard to believe that we're in August now. It feels like we're in August outside, but it's hard to believe just the summer's gone quick. And I know some of our students, I even just heard some are starting school next week and then the following week. And so, man, it has gone quick. But in 21 days, on August 21st, we have probably what's maybe my favorite event that we do all year. And it's an event we call the One Event. Real original name. We're super creative here at City Walk. And it's an event that we do, and it's an event we do especially for people that volunteer here at City Walk. Here at City Walk, we call volunteers bridge builders because we feel like everyone, whether they're in the parking lot, the kids ministry, the band, is building bridges to people connecting with Jesus. And so we dedicate one whole event to inspire, encourage, have a lot of fun, train, give a lot of free stuff to our bridge builders. And I want to encourage you, if you're a bridge builder, or if you're like, man, I've been coming a little bit and been kind of toying with the idea of joining a team, sign up for the One Event. You can go right into the app, and you click on Sunday, then the bulletin, and then you can sign up right there. It's going to be a really good day. And if you don't come for anything else but this, we're going to have Porky's Barbecue there. So that's going to be worth coming for. And then if you were following us on social media yesterday, we put out some new t-shirt designs. And so we're going to be giving those away to all our bridge builders. And so it's going to be a fun day, and the content will be good too. But you get some free stuff. So make sure you sign up, and it's going to be a really good time. Probably like our family, and my wife kind of made fun of me about this last night. She says, I guess we're watching the Olympics again tonight, because I said, hey, we have basically 2 weeks every 4 years to watch this. So our family every night is turning on NBC, and we're watching, even though we already know who won some of the things, we're going to watch the Olympics. And so we've been watching the Olympics. Maybe your family has too. And I don't know if you watch much of it, but I'm always drawn in to the stories of the athletes. And they do a good job telling the stories of the different athletes that are competing and kind of how they got to where they're at. And for them, the week or two of the Olympics is probably the biggest week by far of their life. It's a week that their family, probably since they were a little kid, has been talking about. It's a week that they've been working towards. It's a week they've been sacrificing for. And literally for some of them, they started training when they were in elementary or even in preschool. And now as young adults, they're competing for our country. And it's a really big week for them. And for some of them, and if you've been watching, you've seen this, for some of them, man, the week is going to go exactly how they dreamed it would. They're going to end the week by standing on a podium, and they're going to have a medal around their neck, and they're going to hear their national anthem, and man, it's going to end just like they dreamed of. But for some of them, it's not going to end exactly how they dreamed. It's not going to go exactly how they planned, and maybe they aren't going to end the week with standing on a podium, but for every single one of them, win or lose, the week of the Olympics, the 2 weeks that they'll be competing, is going to mark their life. Whether they win or lose, they will never forget what they went through in Tokyo as they competed for our country in the Olympics. And probably there's nobody here, maybe you will be in the future, but probably none of us have ever experienced that exact thing where we were competing for our country in the Olympics. But every single one of us, whether you're a follower of Jesus or somebody that's maybe even investigating faith, we all know what it's like to move into a really, really important season of our life, and we know how that affects us. If you try to remember, for some of you, try to remember the week or two before you got married. And that week leading up to your wedding, and just, man, all the stuff that went on, man, that was a week that marked you. That's a week you'll probably never forget. That was an important week in your life. For some of you, it was the week of surgery. Man, there was an important surgery that you were going to have, or that was coming up. And for you, man, that week or two right around that surgery was an important season in your life that has marked you forever. For me, I remember the week before my son Austin was born. Austin is our oldest kid, and I remember, man, the week before he was born, I was a train wreck. I ran red lights, ran stop signs. My brain was just fuzzy the whole week. I remember the night before we went to the hospital, and Lori, it was scheduled, so we kind of knew what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. But the night before I couldn't sleep, I just remember sitting in our bedroom with my computer on the floor just working, because it marked me. That week was just a monumental week for me. And as we've been looking at the life of Jesus, just like we've had some big weeks in our life and some big seasons that marked us, Jesus had a week in his life that was the most important week in his ministry, really in his whole life. And Mark, if you've been with us watching online or you've been with us throughout the summer, you know we've been kind of walking through the book of Mark. And in the book of Mark, we've seen Mark talk to us about Jesus' miracles. We've seen Mark talk to us about the teaching Jesus gave. We've seen Mark tell us about how Jesus loved people that nobody else loved, and that the religious system of the day had kind of rejected. We've seen all that. And all of that leads up to what will become the most important week of Jesus' life, a week that Mark tells us about in detail. And here's what's interesting about this week. The week that is most important in Jesus' life was ended way differently than the followers of Jesus thought it would end. Just like there's people at the Olympics that, man, they are dreaming about how their week's going to end, and they have a picture of how this thing's going to go, and for some of them it does, for some of them it doesn't. Well, Jesus' followers, the ones that had been following him closely, they had a way that they thought this thing was going to go, And at the end of this very important week, all of them were surprised. All of them had to grapple with two really big questions after this week was over, because the week did not go according to any of their plans. And here's the two big questions they had to grapple with. The first one is this: why am I following Jesus? That they had to grapple with, okay, this thing didn't turn out the way it was supposed to, so why am I really following this guy Jesus? And then the second question that they had to grapple with and really come face to face with was this question: what if Jesus' plan is different than mine? Like obviously this thing's not playing out exactly the way I thought, so what if Jesus has a different plan than I have? What am I going to do with that? And Mark, he picks up his account of Jesus' life as Jesus has just left Jericho and he's entering Jerusalem kind of on the final lap of the race. He's starting the final lap. This is the biggest week of his ministry. And Mark tells us this in Mark chapter 11. It says this: when they approached Jerusalem at Bethphage and Bethany, near the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples and told them, "Go into the village ahead of you. As soon as you enter it, you will find a colt tied up there on which no one has ever sat." And so Jesus, he's entering Jerusalem. He's on the final lap. If you've been watching the Olympics, you know, man, that final lap, they speed up, they get more focused. Well, Jesus is on the final lap of his life, his ministry, his goals. And as he enters Jerusalem, and I think we have a map of kind of Jesus' ministry, and it's like you can read all of that really well because you have such great eyes. But bottom line, this is where Jerusalem is down here, towards the bottom. And so you can see this is Israel, where Jesus has done a lot of stuff. But at the end, kind of the final lap of Jesus' ministry, the biggest week of his life, he comes back to Jerusalem. And it's where the most important thing that he came to do, he's going to do. And so they get to Jerusalem. They're kind of moving their way, making their way back. And Jesus says to a couple disciples, one may have been Peter, said, hey guys, I want you to go into the next village. And when you go into the next village, there's going to be a colt. There's going to be a young donkey there. And here's what Jesus tells them. He says, I want you to untie it. If anyone says to you, why are you doing this? Say, the Lord needs it, and we'll send it back here right away. So go, man, you're going to find this donkey. When you find it, I want you to steal it, and I want you to bring it to me, but make sure they know we'll bring it right back. Not really. He wasn't going to steal it, but it seems kind of weird. You just walk into a city, oh, there's somebody's pet. I'll take that with me. We'll take it because it's for Jesus. And so he says, hey, if anybody asks, tell them the Lord wants it. And people in that time, they knew, okay, Jesus, okay, we can trust Jesus and he'll bring it back. So that's what happened. So it says they went and found a colt outside in the street. It happened exactly the way Jesus said. It was tied by the door, and they untied it. And some of those standing there said to them, hey, what are you doing? Why are you taking our kid? Why are you taking our kid's pet? Why are you taking our colt? They answered them just as Jesus had said, so they let him go. They trusted Jesus. Okay, he'll get it back to us. They brought the colt to Jesus and threw their clothes on it. And he sat on it. Many people spread their clothes on the road, and others spread leafy branches cut from the fields. So you have Jesus, he's coming in, man. He's coming into Jerusalem, and he tells his guys, hey, go get this colt. They do exactly what he says. It happens exactly the way he says. And then they bring him this, like, why does Jesus want a colt? All right, we'll go get the colt for him. So they bring it to Jesus, and then they put some clothes, they don't have a saddle, so they kind of put some clothes on it. And then what happens is, and this is what would happen when a king was entering a city. This is how it would play out. They put their clothes on the colt. Jesus sat on it. And then what they did is they lined the pathway with their coats and with these branches, these palm branches. so that Jesus, the colt, would kind of carry Jesus along. And that's exactly what happened. They got this colt, and now Jesus is walking with this colt, and there's these people just throwing their clothes out, and he's going down the trail. And it's just, if you grew up in church, you saw this on flannel graph, or somebody handed you a little palm branch on Easter Sunday, like, oh, this is the one that Jesus, yeah, just like this. But that's what happened. And here's what's real interesting. As he's going down the way, and he's on this colt, and he's kind of riding his way into town, the people, they start yelling. It says, those who went ahead and those who followed shouted, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest heaven. That word Hosanna, it means save us now. It's a political term. When like a king's coming into town, they're saying, hey, save us. You're our king. You're the one that's going to do it. And so as Jesus is coming into town, his followers are like, yes, it's finally happening. Jesus is going to save us. He's going to pull Rome and the grip that Rome has on us. He's going to save us from that. And so, man, they're saying, Hosanna, save us. You're our leader. And here's what's real interesting. 500 years later, Zechariah told us this exact thing would happen in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. You can follow along. It says this is 500 years before this happened. Zechariah said, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout in triumph, daughter Jerusalem. Let your king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. And so, man, this thing is playing out exactly how the people literally 500 years earlier said it would play out. And these people are, man, they're so excited. Jesus is coming. Man, he's finally going to win the battle. This is good. See, the people, they wanted so badly to be liberated from Rome. And so, man, they lined the streets and thought, man, this is the guy. And they were kind of looking for like a varsity version of King David. Like King David, he was the man, and he was one of their heroes, and he ruled their land, and life was good when King David was ruler. And so now they're thinking, man, this guy's even better than King David. And that's kind of what they were looking for. And for some of them, they had been taught this since they were little kids. They had been taught about this Jesus coming, this Messiah. But here's the thing. Jesus had a better plan than these people had. See, a plan that would do much more than free them from Rome. His plan would free them from sin and death for eternity. And here's the sad thing. This is so sad. A lot of the people that were yelling Hosanna, a lot of the people that were laying down their clothes and putting palm branches down on Sunday, when they figured out that the plan that Jesus had didn't line up with their plan, that next Friday they were the ones saying, crucify him, crucify him. All in a week. Because his followers had, some of them had a way they thought this thing would go, and they had a goal for Jesus, and they were kind of using Jesus for what they wanted. And when they figured out that it wasn't going to happen, they went from Hosanna, save us now, to crucify him, all within just a few days. And the way things kind of played out, they were faced with those two big questions. Those questions I already introduced you to. The first one being, why am I following Jesus? Man, it's pretty easy to follow Jesus on Sunday when he's, man, coming into the city and Hosanna, save us now, this is the guy. Man, okay, I can get behind that. But as things started to play out that week and it didn't seem to go as planned and stuff wasn't starting to play out the way it seemed it should have played out, why am I following Jesus? And then that second question that they were faced with was this, man, what if Jesus' plan is different than mine? Like, what am I going to do now that I begin to realize that his plan is not exactly the way I had it going? What am I going to do with it? There's a great theologian that some of you have heard of. His name is Garth Brooks. And Garth Brooks said it this way. some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. And Garth is not a theologian. You probably already know that, most of you. He's a country music singer. But you know this. There's some things you really wanted to happen that you're really glad didn't end up happening the way you wanted them to happen. There's that relationship you had in high school and that you prayed this was the one, and now you are thanking God that one wasn't the one. There's that job that you really wanted and you prayed and, I think this is what God wants and God's plan. This has to be your plan because this looks like it's going to be good for me. And it didn't turn out the way you thought it would. And now you look back and think, man, I am so glad that thing didn't play out the way I wanted it to. And here's what's interesting about this situation. If this thing would have played out the way the people wanted it to, they would have been saved from Rome, but they would still be not saved, and they would be enslaved forever to their sin, and they would spend an eternity without God if they got what they wanted, if they got the plan that they had laid out. And so Jesus, he obviously had a better plan, and so after this, man, he's kind of into the city now. It's now late at night, and he takes some time to just go into the temple, and he's kind of looking around the temple because this temple is the temple that they worshiped in, and you'll see later, I'll show you a map later where, this is a large temple that took up a lot of the city. This temple had become part of the problem. You look at a religious temple that, man, this thing is so beautiful, and man, this is so religious, and Jesus came to a spot in his ministry where the temple started to stand for everything he stood against. The temple started to be a place where greed, where manipulation, where you gained favor built on your works and not by your relationship with God, and it became the very thing that Jesus came to die for. He died for the legalism that temple represented in many cases. And so as Jesus, he's looking at the temple, it's late at night, he goes back out of the city and he's, sleeps that night. And then the very next day, he comes back into the city one more time, and he comes into the city and he once again calls people to something better than legalism. He comes back in the city and he does some, kind of radical things to call people to a relationship, not to works-based religion. And it's one of the reasons that people wanted to kill him at the end of the week for what he was about to do. It says this in verse 12. The next day, when they went out from Bethany, he was hungry. So seeing in the distance a fig tree with leaves, he went to find out if there was anything on it. So Jesus had stayed outside the city, and now he's coming back into the city. It's the morning, and so Jesus sees a fig tree. And the fig tree, man, it's got beautiful leaves. It's in bloom. It's like, okay, good. I'm kind of hungry, and I'm going to go and get something to eat. It'd be like you walking into a house, and you smelling like fresh baked cookies. Like you walk in and you know that smell. You walk in and it's whether it's your grandma's house, your mom, your dad, or whatever. You walk in and it's like, oh man, this is good. Or you get home one night and you smell the grill and you're like, oh man, there's something good's cooking on the grill out back. And so, man, you would automatically think like if you smell cookies or you smell the grill that you're going to walk inside. It would be, normal to think I'm going to walk inside and find a plate of cookies. Yeah, that's why it smells like this. Or, man, I'm going to go into the backyard and I'm going to find my dad or my grandpa or somebody out there, and there's going to be some beautiful meat right on that grill. That's what you would expect if you smelled those things. And Jesus, he sees this tree that's in bloom, and man, so he goes to this tree expecting to have a little breakfast because, man, this tree's in bloom, and he gets there. And he finds that there's no fruit. It says this, when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. He said to it, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. And his disciples heard it. You're like, is Jesus mad at a tree? He might have been a little bit, actually. He was a little hangry. He was a little hungry. He come to this tree and he sees, man, it's in bloom and it should have some type of fruit on it. And now there's nothing there. And so he's like, okay, No one's ever going to eat from this tree again. I'm cursing this tree. And his guys are looking around like, what did this tree ever do to you, Jesus? But here's what Jesus was doing. Jesus was the master teacher. And so what he was trying to do is he was trying to use this tree as an illustration of the religion and legalism of Israel. It was a religion that looked really good on the outside. And man, things looked, if you looked at it from afar, you think, man, they've got it all together. But then when you get really close, you realize there's no fruit. And Jesus was using this as an illustration as he walks into the city and he says, man, this tree, it's just like Israel. It looks good on the outside and it does all the right things on the outside, but there's no fruit. And so he curses it. And then it says this, and this is where it gets a little crazy. You're like, Jesus, okay. It says this in verse 15. They came to Jerusalem, and he went into the temple. And so let me throw this other map up again that you won't be able to read good, but you'll be able to see. So this whole area is Jerusalem. And this kind of red area is the temple. So you can see, like, the temple's pretty big compared to the whole city. Like, this is a pretty big temple. And there were certain parts of this temple. There was a part that only women could go to. There was a part that only Gentiles weren't allowed to go in where the Jews were, so they had a court for the Gentiles. And so this is a pretty big place. And so Jesus, he's walking in, he's kind of hangry, he hasn't gotten to eat breakfast, and he comes in and he sees something that just makes his heart cringe. And it says this, it says, they came to Jerusalem, he went into the temple and began to throw out those buying and selling. He overturned the tables of money changers and the chairs of those selling doves, and would not permit anyone to carry goods through the temple. So Jesus comes into the temple, and he sees that there's merchants there that are there. Some of them are there for the right reasons, and they're there to do good things, but they've taken this little good thing and they've basically begun to extort people, and they begin to hold people back from worshiping God, and it's become real greed and manipulation, and Jesus is fed up. And so he comes in and he starts just, when we get to heaven, I'm like, I want to watch this one on like whatever, Netflix in heaven or whatever, like this thing really play out. He just starts turning over the tables. These people that are there, and they're there to manipulate, and they're there to be greedy, and they're there to pull people away from worshiping God. He's just not having it anymore, and he just starts flipping over tables. And then he sees that people are starting to just, instead of using the temple for what it's for, they're using it as like a shortcut through the city to carry their stuff. And he's like, no, you're not doing that anymore either. I don't know if you've ever been in a spot where somebody was so angry that they started turning over tables, but that would get your attention. I remember as a little kid, the night before Thanksgiving, my dad he worked in the grocery business, and he had to work really, really late. And so I think we only had one car at that point. So we went and picked him up, and it was now probably 1, 2 in the morning. And so we had 3 boys, mom, dad, and dad's like, let's go to a little diner and let's have pancakes. Let's just do something like that. So again, 3 boys, we're always for eating. So we're all for it. So we went to this little place called Wags. And Wags was a diner. Actually, Walgreens owned this little company, and they had like 90 little restaurants, kind of like Denny's. And so we went to Wags, and we're ordering our food, and I hear my mom, there's starting to be a crowded line, and it's like 2 in the morning. I hear my mom say to my dad, hey, Dave, we may have to leave. And again, I have no clue like what's going on. I'm just excited about what I'm going to eat. And all of a sudden, 2 dudes like 5 feet away from us just start rolling around on the floor and fighting, and all of a sudden our table gets turned over, and my dad jumps up, and quickly there was other people there that stopped it. But I remember, man, that I was probably 7, 8 years old. That marked me. I was like, what in the heck is going on? We're trying to eat a pancake, and these guys are like turning our table over. It was crazy. And I can't imagine if somebody came in church and just, hey, the coffee table, you know what? Let's throw that on the ground, offering table. I mean, that would catch your attention, and that's what Jesus did. He turned over these tables, and he was not having it was bothering him that these people were taking the worship of God, and specifically they were doing it in the court of the Gentiles, where outsiders would come to worship God, and they were making this thing what it wasn't supposed to be, and he was done with it. And so he turned over these tables, and it says this in verse 17, he was teaching them, "Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, Gentiles, women, men, different races." He wanted people to be able to worship, and he says, "But you have made it a den of thieves." And who he was talking about when he said "you" was the religious people. You people that are in charge of this temple, you people that should be the ones doing the right thing, you guys have taken this thing and you're making outsiders feel uncomfortable. You guys are taking the worship of God and you're making it different than that, and you're being manipulative and you're being greedy, and we're not having this anymore. And so Jesus was putting himself at them, like he was basically saying to them, you are not in charge anymore. We're not doing it this way anymore. And so you can imagine that was not super popular. And it says this in verse 18. The chief priests and the scribes heard it and started looking for a way to kill him, for they were afraid of him. And then it goes on, it says, because the whole crowd was astonished. They were overwhelmed. They were blown away by his teaching, that someone would be so bold to go against the religious system. Somebody would be so bold to teach the way they had heard Jesus teach for the last few years. Somebody would be so bold to love people that the religious system had written off. I mean, people were all into what Jesus was doing, and so the religious leaders were afraid. Because, again, they were all about popularity and looking good on the outside. And so if they made the wrong move, they were going to get a lot of people upset with them. And so they wanted to kill him, but they were afraid of him. And it says this, after this is kind of over, and just imagine being one of his disciples. Like, what happened, Jesus? I mean, you've seen Jesus feed the 5,000. You've seen him do a lot of things. But, man, this one went to another level. And it says this in verse 19. Whenever evening came, they would go out of the city early in the morning. As they were passing by, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots up. Then Peter remembered and said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered. And listen to Jesus' reply. It seems out of place, but it's right, his goal. Jesus replied to him, have faith in God. Peter's like, oh yeah, Jesus, I forgot, but there's that tree. Yeah, that one you kind of were upset at. Man, it's withered now. It's all the way down to the roots. Man, that thing is gone. And instead of Jesus trying to, let me explain that to you, he just says, hey, guys, have faith in God. Trust in God. Because remember what that represented? That represented a system that was all based on outward appearance. It was all based on works. It wasn't based on trusting God and obeying God. It was just all based on what everyone else thought. And he said, yeah. The opposite of that is faith and trust in God. So Peter, have trust in God. So put yourself in the scene. You've just seen Jesus take it to some people in the temple. He's fed up with them holding people back from being able to worship God. He's fed up with them making outsiders feel unwelcomed. He's just fed up with it. And so you're standing with Jesus. You're actually standing with Jesus on the Mount of Olives. And not far in the distance, you see a huge body of water. It's the Dead Sea. And then just off to the side or not far away from you, you see this tree that Jesus just yesterday had cursed, and now it's shriveled up and it's dead. And so imagine just the scene. Put yourself in the scene. Because what Jesus says next, he uses the scene to make his point. Jesus says this. He says, truly I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, be lifted up and thrown into the sea. This mountain we're standing on, Mount of Olives, the Dead Sea's right there. If anybody says to this mountain, get up, I'm throwing you into the sea. So they knew what mountain he was talking about. And does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will happen, it will be done for him. See, moving a mountain was a metaphor in kind of Jewish literature for doing the impossible. And what Jesus was saying is, those who believe in God can have confidence that he will accomplish even the impossible according to his will in their life. And he goes on and he says this. He says, therefore I tell you, everything you pray and ask for, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. And he's making this point that God is always ready to respond to the prayers of his followers. There's no situation or difficulty that's impossible for him. And so he's making these two, like they see both of these scenes. This scene of this tree that's just represents this Israel and works and all that stuff. And then he says, then there's this other way where you can literally see God do the impossible. And he uses the tree and he uses the mountain and the sea to illustrate it. And it says this in verse 25. And whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, so that your Father in heaven will also forgive you your wrongdoing. Literally a few days from the cross. Jesus is probably 4 days from going to the cross. And he, 4 days from going to the cross, he gives his followers, his closest followers, a clear picture of two paths. He gives them a picture of Israel's way, of the religion that is empty, proud, unforgiving, and honestly powerless. And he's just used this tree that has no fruit kind of to illustrate that visually. And he's like, there's a way there. Yeah, it's the way of the religion in Israel. It's the way of the Jewish religious leaders. It's very empty. It's very proud. It's very unforgiving. It's powerless. But then he says there's also another way. It's a way that I'm proposing. It's a relationship that is characterized by trust. It's a relationship characterized by forgiveness. It's a relationship that has power that you cannot imagine. It's a relationship that brings hope. See, for Jesus' followers, in 4 days, everything would change. Their leader would be killed by the Romans, and he wouldn't defeat the Romans. And so as Jesus is just a few days before that takes place, his followers, just like honestly we are faced with those two questions we talked about earlier. The first one is this: why am I following Jesus? So Peter, Matthew, these guys that were right there with him, that had seen all this take place here in just 3 or 4 or 5 days, they were going to have to make a decision like, this thing didn't play out the way I thought it was. Like my motivation for following Jesus might not even be a motivation anymore. So why am I really following Jesus? And that question that would be very applicable to them 2,000 years ago is just as applicable to us right now. Like, why am I following Jesus? For some in this society, like in our society today, it's man, what he does for me. It's almost like a cost benefit. You look at the cost and benefit analysis where you're like, hey, this is what it costs me to follow Jesus, but here's the benefits I get out of following Jesus. And so it's a cost versus benefit analysis, and you've kind of decided, hey, I'm going to follow Jesus because I think it benefits me more than it costs me. Like, is that why you follow Jesus? Is that why these disciples were following Jesus? Because, man, hey, Jesus is going to win, and he's going to defeat Rome, and I'm going to get a spot in his cabinet, and this is going to go well. Why are you following Jesus? Why am I following Jesus? Is it because of what he does for me? Or is it about who he is, whether he does anything or not? And then the second question that they had to deal with is the same one that you've probably had to deal with this in the last month in some area of your life. what if Jesus' plan is different than mine? What if the way I think it should play out with my kids, it doesn't play out that way? What if the way I think it should play out with my job or with, and you fill in the blank, with my finances or with this relationship, what if it doesn't play out exactly the way I think is best and Jesus has a different plan? What do we do with that? And really, it comes down to a third question that they had to deal with and we have to deal with. Is the simple question is this: will you trust him? If the plan doesn't play out the way we thought it would, do we abandon it? Abandon Jesus, and that didn't work, I'm going to go my own way? Or do we just say, you know what? Your way's better. And Jesus, you know what? I can't see the big perspective. And you know what, man? As much as I want Rome to no longer be in control, and I want to be out from under the enemy Rome, maybe Jesus, maybe you have a much bigger picture that's actually going to save the world from sin and death for eternity. And man, I never want to counterfeit my little plan and my little knowledge that I have in my brain that isn't very, nothing compared to yours. But why would I ever take my plan and try to go up against your plan? A much better plan. Maybe you're here and you're someone that's not a follower of Jesus. Maybe you're watching online and you haven't seen, you're not a follower of Jesus, and maybe it's because you've seen some hypocrisy by the church, and you've seen, maybe you've been hurt by some people that called themselves followers of Jesus, and so you've kind of just lumped Jesus in with all of the people that say they're his followers that aren't good examples of him. And so maybe you've written off the church. Maybe you've written off faith. Maybe you've written off all those things, and I get it. If you have, I get it. If all that's happened to you, I get it. And maybe if you're honest, you would say, hey, Chris, I've kind of written off the God thing and the Jesus thing and the faith thing, and I've kind of become the king of my world. I kind of do things the way I want to do them. I kind of do them according to my plan. I'm in charge. My way is best. How's that working? And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just being honest. Like, how's that working out for you? And here's my question for you. Maybe you're someone that's not a follower of Jesus, and you would say, Chris, that's kind of the way it's been playing out for me. Here's my question for you. Would you be willing to at least question your assumption? Would you be willing to at least question the assumption that your plan is best? Would you be willing to at least question the assumption that maybe God has something better for you? I didn't say easier, I said better. Because when you become a follower of Jesus, it doesn't necessarily get easier, but I promise you, you won't regret it. And so the question is, if you're someone that's watching online or you're here and you're saying, you know what, I just haven't, at this point in my life, I haven't stepped over that line of faith, haven't started a relationship with Jesus, kind of been the king of my own world, and it works out okay sometimes. Sometimes, if I'm honest, it doesn't work out great. Would you at least be willing to question that maybe God has a better plan? And his plan always starts with a relationship. It starts with a relationship with Jesus. And maybe you're here and you'd say, Chris, I've never started a relationship with Jesus. Well, you don't need me to do that. You can do that right where you're at. You can, just in the quietness of your heart, you can watch it online. You can be on your front porch watching this and just kind of talk to God and just admit to God, God, I've disobeyed you. I've kind of done things my own way. I've sinned is what the Bible calls it. You can admit that to God. I mean, you're not going to surprise him. I promise you that. He's not going to be like, oh, wow, I didn't know you had done that. No, he knows. And then you just believe that, man, when Jesus came and died on the cross and then rose from the grave, that he did that for you to pay for your sin, to take your punishment so that he could have a relationship with you because he has a plan for you. And then you just call, man, Jesus, would you come into my life? Would you make me new on the inside? You can do that right in the quietness of this room. Maybe you're a follower of Jesus, and I know there's a lot of you that at some point in your life you've made that decision. You've made that decision, and maybe it was when you were younger, maybe it was just recently. But here's what I would guess you struggle with just like I struggle with. I would guess that you sometimes grapple with why your plan isn't playing out the way you think is best. Am I the only one? I would guess there's some of you that even this week have grappled with some things where, man, you thought this way was best, but it seems like God's closing the door and God's got a different direction, and it's hard for you to trust Him. Here's what my question is for you. Are you tied to your plan? Are you tied to your plan? And specific, let's not be real general. Are you tied? Maybe it's for you, it's your parenting. Maybe for you, it's, man, you're struggling with something in parenting, and man, you wish you could just fix this thing. And I know for me, I've had many times where I just want to fix it. And I have to realize, God, your plan is bigger than mine. You love my kids more than I love my kids. Maybe it's something at work. Maybe it's something that, man, God, why are you putting this person in my life? This person is a pain. This person is making life tough. And God, it can't be your will for this person to be in my life. And God's saying, maybe I have a bigger plan. Maybe me making you more like Jesus is going to take you dealing with this person and developing some patience. Maybe He's got a different plan. Are you okay with that? Are you willing to say, Jesus, I trust you. Yeah, I don't always like the direction of your plan, but I know it's best. As we close, I want to ask you one question, and then I want to pray. I asked this question to some of our volunteers today, our bridge builders. Is Jesus is kind of working in our hearts. Hopefully He's working in your heart, whether you're a follower of Jesus or maybe you're somebody that's, just investigating. You're kind of leaning into the church thing again. You've been burnt before, and maybe you're watching online, and man, you felt God talking to you today. You felt something in your heart. You felt Him poking at something. Here's my question for you. What if Jesus got His way in your heart today? What if you said yes to whatever He's saying to you in your heart today? What if you had the courage to just obey what He's saying? And maybe He's not saying anything. I don't want you to make something up, but maybe He is. Maybe you, when I talk about struggling with your plan over God's, it's you're like, man, yes, that's me. That's why I worry so much. That's why I have anxiety. That's why you fill in all the blanks of what happens when I get too focused on my plan and I try to micromanage this thing instead of saying, God, your way is best. I trust you. What if Jesus got His way in your heart? What would happen today? Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for your word. I thank you for the story of your work throughout the last 2,000 years. And Lord, what started with you and your followers and you just trying to make so clear to them that a relationship with you was much better and your plan was much better than their plan. And God, I pray for us, whether we're watching online or we're here this morning, that we would just listen to you. If we're a follower of you, God, I pray that we would pinpoint in our heart those areas in our heart where we are holding too tight to our plan. And that we would just release that. And we would trust you. Lord, if we're here and maybe we're not a follower of you, I pray, God, that you would draw us to a relationship with you. And even in the quietness of this room and the quietness of wherever anybody's watching this online, God, that you would draw people to admit to you that they've sinned, they've disobeyed you, and to believe that you died and rose from the grave, and then to call on you and ask you to save them. Lord, we know you have done that for the last 2,000 years. I pray that you would continue to do that today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Would you stand with us? I think a lot of times, like the people that were in the temple doing these things that they shouldn't have been doing, we do that a lot in worship, in church, in our lives, things that shouldn't be there. And a lot of times it's because we want preferences, not even just this egregious sin or whatever, but we have our preferences and we want our comfort, right? But worship and church is not really about what we can get all the time. Worship is about what can we give to God, and really, ultimately, we give to God whatever He's given to us, back to Him. So as we sing, we're going to sing, God, You're So Good. And I don't know if today, if you're feeling it, and that's okay. Or if you are feeling it, and that's okay too. But let's sing, let's worship, let's think about these words. Why is God so good? What has He done? And not even just what has He done, but who is He that makes Him good? Okay, let's sing. Amazing love that welcomes me, the kindness of mercy that bought with blood wholeheartedly my soul undeserving. God, You're so good. God, You're so good. God, You're so good. You're so good to me.
Behold the cross, age to age,
And hour by hour,
the dead are raised, the sinners
saved, the work of Your power.
God, You're so good. God, You're so good. God, You're so good. You're so good to me.
Oh, God, You're so good. God, You're so good. God, You're so good. You're so good to me. I am blessed, I am called, I am healed, I am whole, I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with Your power for the glory, Jesus' name. I am blessed, I am called, I am healed, I am whole, I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with Your power for the glory, Jesus' name. 'Cause God, You're so good. God, You're so good. God, You're so good. You're so good to me. I am blessed, I am called, I am healed, I am whole, I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with Your power for the glory, Jesus' name. 'Cause God, You're so good. God, You're so good. You're so good to me. I am blessed, I am called, I am healed, I am whole, I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with Your power for the glory, Jesus' name. so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. God, you're so good. Yes, God, you're so good. I know, God, you're so good. You're so good to me. I'm blessed. I am blessed. I am called. I am healed. I am whole. I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with your power for the glory, Jesus' name. One more time, sing with us. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me.
This is a time that we set aside each week to worship through giving. Now, if this is your first time here and you're just checking us out, seeing what we're all about, you are in no way obligated to give. In fact, you've tuned into a gathering of folks who give so generously that you're not obligated to. Now, if you'd like to give online, there are a couple of ways that you can do that. The first is by clicking on the Give button above me, or in the City Walk app, you can click on Give and you'll be able to give from there. Now, we have a really big announcement that we want to share with you guys, and that is that on August 15th, City Walk Now is going to be moving to an actual live stream. We're going to be live streaming church at 10 a.m., and you can view that here at live.citywalknow.com, and we're also going to be live casting on Facebook and on YouTube. So whatever is your platform of choice, at 10 a.m., you can stream church at live.citywalknow.com, on Facebook or on YouTube. So we look forward to seeing you all there starting on August 15th. So with that being said, I really enjoyed spending tonight with you. I look forward to seeing you all next week at 6 p.m. at live.citywalknow.com, and have a great week.